I would like to invite Mr. Dave Bradley to the stage and his wonderful panelists, and they're going to be talking about how to hit the mark with integrating ads into their game. So give a round of applause for Dave and his wonderful panelists.
Just to introduce things, so my name is Dave Bradley. I'm the COO of Steel Media. Basically, I oversee the Pocket Gamer teams. And what we're going to be talking about here is advertising. Right now, you've got to remember the games industry is, after all, a business, and we're all in the business of making money, whether that's through monetizing our games by selling ads in them or promoting our own games and the ads process involved in that. So we're going to explore in this session how developers can make advertising work for them, right, as a source of revenue and also as part of the player experience as well. We've got some insights from AudioMob, who are our track sponsors, and from Tamatem, who are our sponsor here as well at the show. And we're going to look at what's driving ad performance in 2025 and look at the role of things like audio and ad formats that you might not have considered. So we're going to talk about that and talk about various models here. And also, I really hope we're going to talk about some practical examples of advertising in the games industry, and hopefully you'll come away from this session knowing a little bit more about how it all works. Okay, so what we'll do is I've got a bunch of questions to take us through the next 40 minutes. I'd love it if anyone here has questions for the experts here on the stage. If you put your hands up, I'll try and get to you, but I've got plenty to keep us going. What I'll do first of all is we'll start here and I'll ask my guests to introduce their businesses to us because that's the best way to understand. So let's just set the scene. Do you want to go first, Suma, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your company and let everyone know what you're about? Oh, it's Mike.
Technical issues.
Hold on. Don't worry, we'll get there. We'll get there. There we go.
Hello. There we go.
There we go. Got it.
So, hey guys, thank you for joining this talk today. My name is Suma Amreiz. I'm the Senior Developer Relations Engineer here at AudioMob. Prior to AudioMob, I used to work at Unity. My job at Unity, essentially, quick story, was to use Unity like a user, to build games and dog food it, to try and break unreleased versions of Unity. That led me to a lot of extensive experience in game development and well-rounded knowledge with Unity. Most of our customers use the Unity plugin for AudioMob, and audio ads is this thing that I was seeing for a while. And when I transitioned into it, I learned more about ad tech and how the ad tech industry works. AudioMob, the way it works essentially is we put audio ads inside mobile games, but also applications. Some of our customers, of course, include Tamatem, Tamatem, Jawakar, Madhook, but also Gameloft, Voodoo, Zynga, Social Point, and even social media apps like Tumblr. We have audio ads that run in Tumblr. The main benefit of audio ads is that when you're playing your game or you're on your application, it doesn't take you away from it. You can listen to the audio ad and you can continue doing whatever it is that you want to do on the application. So it's an extra source of revenue for developers, and feel free to ask any questions as well. And I'll let Hammam introduce himself too.
Yeah, go for it.
So Tamam. Okay, I'm assuming good. I'm Hammam. I look over user acquisition and ad monetization at Tamatem. You've heard from Tamatem a couple of times, but just in case, we're the leading mobile games publisher in the MENA region. We've published and developed over 60 games, over 400 downloads on them. So I lead paid ads, user acquisition, and also ad monetization. And yeah, I'm happy to be with you guys.
Perfect. That's great. Now, I know we will return to the subject of you folks working together because I know that AudioMob and Tamatem have done some great collaboration. But first of all, let's set the scene generally. Like, what does the in-game advertising landscape look like right now across the world, not just in this region, but generally? Do you want to start us off there? You've been working at ad tech for a while. You've got the Unity background as well. I'll come to you and then we'll come to you next. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what do we need to know about ads right now? What does the landscape look like in 2025?
Yeah, sure thing. So for mobile games at the moment, most of the ads are video ads, and you have a few major names such as Unity ads, AppLovin as well. And a lot of the ads are either just video ads prompting you to install another game or application, or even playable ads. So I'm sure you guys might have seen as well that you can play some of the ads to get a small taste of what the game is like before you then begin to install it. And this is how a lot of mobile gaming studios, through a process called user acquisition, how they try and get you to install their game or application by paying these networks such as AppLovin, Unity ads, to show that in front of new users essentially.
Yeah, that's a great insight to it, because user acquisition is such a huge topic if you work behind the scene in games. Hammam, do you want to tell us a little bit from your perspective? What's your view on the current ad landscape, and what does Tamatem use primarily in your business?
Maybe I can zero in more on MENA. I would say it's a similar story to the global landscape. Maybe one of the most talked about trend over the last couple of years is the move into hybrid monetization, in terms of being, instead of being fully reliant on ads. And as far as I can see it, MENA has been ahead in this, because it's always been very difficult to monetize solely based on ads. So this is going, I think one of the very interesting things that we're seeing is the increase in the share of voice from non-gaming apps, advertising, and games monetizing with non-gaming apps. Before I came in here, I looked at our revenue and impression last 30 days, and 5 out of the top 10 apps that are advertising are non-gaming.
Interesting.
Which is something we've never seen like last year or the year before. So yeah, I think the playables are a big trend right now. It seems that from a user acquisition perspective, if you're not using playables on SDK networks, it's almost meaningless to advertise. So that's a big thing for sure. And the last thing I could mention is it seems that there's a much bigger focus on rewarded ads in general, instead of forced interstitial or banner ads, which is a healthy sign in my opinion. It seems that people are taking the user experience more and more into perspective when designing their games.
That's perfect. We'll definitely talk about that, because you're absolutely right. The way that ads interrupt or otherwise the gaming experience is important. It's fascinating what you were saying actually about the non-gaming apps being part of the ecosystem now. We're finding that more and more as well. So in fact, at our very next event after this one, we're going to be including more non-gaming apps actually in our panels, because it's important. We're going to have a whole apps business summit actually alongside the event, because it's so part of the ecosystem. And we'll also be talking about hybrid in a moment. But look, let's give some practical examples. Not the example of your own business working together, because I want to come to that in detail in a minute. But can you give us some other examples, and perhaps Suma, you can go first, of great ad campaigns that have exemplified everything we've just spoken about?
Of course. So for example, with Mad Hook as well, they're the guys over there. Say hi, give us a wave. With Mad Hook, for example, with Highway Drifter, a racing game, we have ads in Egypt from Tiger Chips, for example. So brands from all around the world want to engage with games that are popular to the region. So cars is a huge thing in the MENA region, of course. We have other examples too, like for example, Jawakir. With Jawakir, I mean, that's a household name in the Middle East. A lot of people know about it. Everyone grew up playing card games as well, before digital games was even a thing. So for it to transition so seamlessly into card games too as well, that's a huge thing. Brands, most of our campaigns, our ads are not ads that say, hey, we want you to install another game. It's mainly branding ads.
Yeah,
so companies like Kinza Cola, Sunsilk, STC, you name it, they want to advertise with audio ads as well with us.
That's great. And that's a really interesting distinction, because the ads ecosystem serves various purposes, one of which is the user acquisition of people to play games. But of course, absolutely, brands want to be inside games as well. Games is a huge media. Do you want to give us some examples perhaps of real?
Yeah, sure. So from a publishing perspective, one of the things we've been always trying to do is to get not just non-gaming apps, but also brands that are not apps to advertise.
Yeah.
And one of the ways we've been doing it for a few years now is direct reach out, like direct deals with in terms of advertising, but also in terms of like sponsoring live ops events and stuff like that.
Right.
One of the things we did this year that was major for us is last Ramadan we partnered with Jahiz, which is one of the leading food delivery apps in Saudi Arabia. And what we did is that they sponsored some tournaments, some live events, but the extra thing that we bundled with that partnerships that we've never done before is we gave them exclusivity on multiple ad placements within VIP Balut, which is our card game. And that was a big plus for them, because they get, like, they did it in Ramadan, so they get like prime traffic, but also for us from a user perspective, and the feedback we got from the users is that they like that they get relevant advertising to them instead of getting a random app every other session. They just get like vouchers to use Jahiz, things that are relevant to Ramadan, Iftar, stuff like that. So that was a very exciting collaboration we did in Ramadan.
That's great, and you're absolutely right. People don't mind advertising if it's relevant, if it delivers something that they're interested in. However, on that note, let's talk about the experience you folks have had of working together. So you've got your two companies that have collaborated on, I want to say, Fashion Queen. Is that right? Yeah. So talk us through that. What were the results of what did you do together, and what were the results of that?
Would you like to go first?
Sure. So Fashion Queen, Malikat al-Moda, as people who maybe some people play it. It was a perfect opportunity to integrate audio ads because the game is very narrative based, it's very story based. So the premise behind it is you forge your way to be a Hollywood star. So it's stories that build up on top of each other. So integrating audio ads was like a no-brainer for that game in specific because it can fit easily into the flow. We've designed it in a way where characters would talk to you, so it looked even more natural. In terms of results, it was a very good incremental revenue addition to the game. We saw zero effect on user retention or engagement, so that was good. And the good thing is that it was introduced both interstitials and rewarded, and both did well. So that's usually, you don't usually get that. So yeah, maybe you can.
Yeah, and you can think about a game like Fashion Queen. You can argue that primarily the audience is like female as well and women, and you can imagine how much Sunsilk would want to be in a game like that because it's relevant. So yeah, like brands like to be placed in relevant contextual moments inside a video game too as well.
That's interesting. And as you say, the AudioMob experience is audio, so people can play the game and it doesn't interrupt the experience, right? That's how that works.
Exactly, yeah.
While we're on that then, let's talk a little bit about ad types generally. Like, we've mentioned a few things. Playables we've spoken about. Audio, of course, is important. You mentioned interstitials in passing, that kind of thing. Like, what type of ads currently perform best for players in the way you understand it? But also, talk us a little bit through the process. How do you decide what's best, right?
Of course.
So
at AudioMob, we have three types of ads.
Okay.
We have standard ads, which can be muted. And the banner it's a small little square banner on the top right corner of the screen or the top left, wherever the developer wants to place it, so that it doesn't conflict with the UI of the game. However, we also have rewarded audio ads. So let's say, for example, I want to accept a free loot box to get some skin or some coins. The user actively presses on claim the free gifts, and then the audio ad triggers. And the reason why brands love this is because they want to be associated with a positive moment in the game. They don't want to, for example, show an ad when you lose the game, etc. They like to be placed within moments of the game where there's a positive experience. We do have background audio ads too as well, but that's more used, I would argue, in podcast apps.
I was going to say, that sounds like very much like a radio experience.
Exactly, yeah. So for games, mainly, it's rewarded and standard ads that are very popular for us.
Interesting. So, of course, as a game developer and publisher, a game maker, how do you decide what's right for a particular game or the audience?
There's no universally correct answer. If we look, our portfolio is a bit diverse. So in terms of monetization, we've got like in-app purchase only games with no ads. We've got rewarded only. We've got interstitial and rewarded, banners, audio ads, and some. So it's a mixed bag. Generally, the process or the way we try to think about it is that in almost every case, adding ads is a net positive. In general, there is always a way to add ads, to add incremental revenue without hurting any health metric for the product. Right. In fact, ads, if implemented correctly, is usually a good feature of the app instead of like a negative thing for the users. Rewarded are usually the go-to when you try to design a new game, because it's the one you can be the most aggressive with, is the one that you can easily fit into the flow of the product. Interstitials will usually be your main driver of revenue because more users will watch it. But then, like, there's no, as I said, there's no one size fits all. It depends on the game. It depends on how you monetize it. It depends on how users retain and engage with the game. But generally, the way you start, because you asked about the process, is you start thinking about the big ones like rewarded and interstitials, and then you start to think, how can I fit in banners or audio ads or brand ads into the game as well?
Yeah, that's interesting. And in fact, you touched on it there, and we'll just dive into this a little bit deeper. Player immersion. So players are playing the game. We've all had an experience perhaps of a game that maybe takes us out of that moment because it's, there's an interstitial ad or something like this. How do you avoid doing that? How do you, for those who may be thinking about it for the first time, or I'm not a game maker either, how do you place ads? Like, what's the science or the art of placing ads? Yeah.
Let me give you an example from a studio that's Gameloft. You guys might have heard of Gameloft. Gameloft made a game called Gangster Vegas, which is like GTA for the mobile phone, right? When you steal a car, you get inside the car and the radio plays an audio ad.
That's perfect. Right.
So it's kind of, it blends into the world. Let's say you have a game like FIFA for the mobile phone. The ads and the banners of a football stadium.
Right.
You can play an audio ad while it shows the bannered ad, for example. Doing it in a way that blends with the game's world makes it more believable and more authentic. And that's what we try and do whenever we have the chance to do so.
I love that. Kind of ambient, right? They're part of the environment. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's great. Fantastic. I don't know whether you wanted to put a spin on that or...
I fully agree. I think another thing you should think about is to vary or diversify your ads, because if users get the same experience with ads over and over again, even if it's not intrusion into the gameplay flow, it still gets a bit boring and a bit like, I don't want to do that again. But if you get a video ad and then an audio ad and then you get a static image, and if you get different types of advertisers in, like brands and apps and games, it also keeps it a bit fresh. I personally enjoy watching ads in games, so that's my experience. If I see the same ad over and over again, I dislike the game itself instead of the ads. So yeah,
that's great. Can I ask you a technical question, which I haven't, but obviously with an ad, the advertiser wants to know that their ad has been seen or heard. Maybe the player isn't listening, right? They've got the sound volume down. How do you track audio ads?
Of course. So we have some patented tech for volume detection, where we can detect what the volume device level is of said game as well. If the user's volume is at 0, rewarded ads, essentially, if the user presses accept on a free loot box, for example, to listen to the rewarded audio ad, if they say, hey, it will say, hey, turn up the volume, press yes to turn it up. They press yes and it automatically turns up the volume for them. So that's a patented tech that we have. We also have audio passback feature too as well, where if the user's listening to Spotify or YouTube Music and they're playing the game at the same time, we can automatically pause the music, play the ad, and then resume the music without them having to leave the app. So it's seamless.
Yeah, that's great.
All consensual as well. So we don't do this without their permission, of course.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So it's all with consent.
That's great. That answers that question. Magnificent. Thank you. So look, let's go into my next question. I want to talk about kind of some companies that you've already mentioned. Let's talk about the kind of local brands and resellers. Obviously, Gameloft International and Tamatem also sell their games everywhere, but also here in the region. Maybe we've got some developers from the region here. How do regional partners shape the ad ecosystem? I mean, what kind of local brands are engaging with players in this region? I think you mentioned a few at the start, but do you want to dive in there and tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So our experience is that there's a big surge in non-gaming apps advertising. Right. As I mentioned, last 30 days, I looked this morning, last 30 days, our top app that is advertising in Tamatem portfolio is Kita, which is a food delivery app in Saudi. So there's a massive surge in this. So this looks very healthy. I think if you look at brands that are non-gaming, this is where the bottleneck seems to appear, because it's still very minimal. And I think the main bottleneck there is the tech itself. The ad network ecosystem has been built around UA for mobile games. So you need MMPs, and you need, most of them are not self-managed, and you need a lengthy sign-up process. And media buyers on the branding side are not used to that. So it's a bit intimidating. I think this is one of the good things that AudioMob are doing, is making it easier for those brands to break into the ecosystem. But in general, I think and also it's telling that AppLovin, when they wanted to break into e-commerce, they had to rebrand totally and launch a new platform. It's obviously was built for a specific niche. So yeah, in terms of apps, non-gaming, it's becoming significantly higher share of voice for us in MENA. Still, brands that are not tech, that are not apps, we're yet to get there. Yeah.
Interesting. That is interesting. And like I said, we're seeing globally. I think we're seeing lots of non-gaming apps being involved, and actually a lot of non-gaming apps are behaving like games. Like people think Duolingo is basically a game, right? That just happens to teach you languages. Tell us a little bit about that. What's your experience of kind of local brands and resellers in this space?
Yeah, in terms of local brands, we partner with Chueri Group, and Chueri Group, they do a really good job of bringing and talking to these brands for us, because in countries, there's so many countries in the Middle Eastern region that we can't personally be there always all the time. So we have to partner with agencies and resellers. And we're in some conversations as well to find some stronger agencies in Jordan too as well that maybe want to bring in brands for us, improve the fill rate, improve ECPMs. That's our goal. At the end of the day, we want to turbocharge this MENA region and bring in more brands, more revenue. And the more revenue there is in the local economy, the more mobile game studios you'll see popping up. So it's quite circular, really.
Yeah.
So improving these metrics is of paramount importance to us as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And I should say, people here, if you'd like to catch up with AudioMob or Tamatem after this, remember you all have access to the Meet to Match platform where you can find you guys. And I imagine you were on there, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about ads themselves, right? The creative side of things. What makes a great in-game ad creative, whether it's audio or visual or whatever else? And it's a two-part question. Firstly, what generally makes a great ad? But secondly, are there any rules in this region particularly that people need to know about? I don't know. Do you want to take us away on that question?
Yeah, I mean, in this region, it's not. I mean, the rules are not specific to MENA, but you want to be as relevant as possible. So that extends to the language, of course, to the dialect, but also to the way you portray your message, the way you get the message across to users. I think in terms of in-app advertising, the biggest thing that makes some ads not great is that they still treat in-app advertising like social. So you make an ad for TikTok and then you use it in-app advertising, it's a totally different format. It's a totally different user behavior and mindset. So I see a lot of ads like you get rewarded ads. So the user is forced to watch 60 seconds, but you utilize the first 10 because you're used to doing that on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. So I would say that the first thing is that use this advantage, like understand what the advantage of in-app advertising is, which is you get a longer user focus on the app. You get a mindset that is already in a gaming mindset, they're already playing, and you get the ability to have a much higher frequency of ad delivery than on social. And the first thing that I mentioned was which you want to be as relevant as possible to the user. So the more personalized you can be, the better it is.
Interesting. And what's your take on that? Yeah, what makes a good audio ad?
A good audio ad is definitely something that's creative. So, for example, with Tiger Chips, this chips company in Egypt, they made a song for their chips, a very catchy one as well. I'm sure you guys have seen like every brand has its little gimmick in audio, like
the Sonic logo. Or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So these things are what stand out. But if you make your ad monotone and it's just, hey there, please buy my whatever, it's not. No one's gonna listen to that. Yeah. So you have to stand out through creativity. And the fact that it's so constrained, or an audio ad to 30 seconds, allows you to think outside of the box. How can I stand out within this 30-second ad slot as well, if that makes sense?
No, absolutely it does. And I think that's one of the things that people need to remember as well, is that ads themselves can be kind of an art form, right? Like there's generally some memorable ads that stay with people. For
example, something that I think a lot of maybe people my age. In PlayStation 1, they made a game called Pepsi Man.
Yeah.
Pepsi Man with a theme song. It's just memorable. Everybody remembers it.
Yeah.
So it's trying to be creative like that through as well with Middle Eastern brands as well. They're learning, and they're also infusing their own local culture too with their brands too. So that's how you can make a really, really good audio ad, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, also we've seen global companies spend a lot of money on video advertising, playable ads and things like this. And some of the, Hollywood actors sometimes find themselves in ads for mobile games, right? Which, I mean, not only shows the power of creative, but also shows the importance of mobile games, I think, now as well.
It also shows the importance of standing out.
Yeah.
Because mobile gaming has become a bit if a concept works for one advertiser, everyone copies it, which you should. You should always like find what's working.
That's good advice.
But utilizing like celebrities or it's a way to stand out, because that's like probably the main challenge with advertising right now, especially with the introduction of AI, where everyone can make whatever ad they want, basically.
Right, absolutely. And we'll come back to the role of AI in a moment, because I do want to talk about that. But also, you've touched on another point there, which is one of the biggest challenges for games right now is just how many of them there are, right? And discoverability is a huge thing, and ads play a big role in that, right? Actually, I want to come back to a topic that you mentioned earlier on, which I think is important. And if you've been in the industry for a while, it'll be no surprise, but perhaps if you're making your first game, it's something to think about, which is hybrid monetization, right? How you make money from your games. Ads is one way to do it, but there are other ways too, in-app purchase and so on. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Like, firstly, how do you talk us through what are your options if you're trying to make money from your game? And also, how do you find a balance? Because it can be a bit overwhelming where you want to cram everything into your game and try and make as much money as possible. Do you want to start us off there? I mean, what does hybrid monetization mean, and what are your options?
Definitely. So for hybrid monetization, what you want to look into is what makes sense for your users, right? There can be a situation, and this is a very fine line and an art form to walk it as well. There can be situations where you over monetize every single aspect and it does not feel authentic anymore. It feels like you're being squeezed essentially.
Right.
So for audio ads, it's about finding the right balance, for example, one every level or one every other level. You commit A/B tests with different SDKs such as AppLovin, Unity Ads, Google AudioMob, different platforms and different venues. And there's a lot of creative forms of making incremental revenue as well. And there's a lot of SDKs. I'm sure if you go to the conferences, you find them. The studios, the ad tech studios that are there with new innovative decisions and products really that can monetize in really unique ways.
Yeah,
I totally agree. I think like the reality is that like the balance starts with gauging your potential in terms of in-app purchases, because that's where everyone wants to be. In-app purchases is a bit more consistent and a bit less reliant on advertising to drive a new user, to buy a new user, to get like a 20% incremental value over their CPI. You need to decide how much can you monetize with in-app purchases, and then think, how much can I supplement it with ads? And usually the answer is in-app purchases are not enough. In-app ads are not enough. So let's find the balance between the two. I think the other flip side of it, because you mentioned that discovery is almost entirely paid right now. So how you evaluate this is based on your CPIs as well. So you need to also start with UA needs to be one of the first things you think about, of how much it's going to cost me to acquire users, and then how am I going to make up that cost, because that's how you calculate it.
It's the big calculation that you have to do when you start thinking of your game as a business and what you want to do. I'm definitely going to come back to user acquisition in a minute, but before I go on to my next question, can I ask another technical question?
Go ahead.
Right. So putting SDKs in your game for the adding, how does that affect the footprint of your game, the download, and how do you balance that? Is there a technical challenge there?
Of course. So with audio ads, the footprint is surprisingly light because it's not that heavy. But what a lot of studios do is they do profile their games, for example. See, for example, how much of a size it does to the build size, how much memory it takes as well in real time. And there's a lot of great profiling tools if you're using something like Unity, for example. But there's external tools as well where you can static analysis tools and all kinds of tools where you can gauge these type of metrics. Definitely A/B test every single different ad tech SDK and see if it increases the amount of crashing in your game, if it actually improves retention, if it does not damage retention. Thankfully for us, our engineering team is quite strong, and our SDK is quite lightweight, and we don't notice any ANRs and any complaints from our users as well. So we've been quite fortunate and blessed with that. I'd let Hammam talk because he's got probably more experience with different ad tech providers as well.
Yeah, I think the size it's a minor issue in general, because if it works, if it brings you money, you just let's add a bit of size over it. But the biggest cost you pay for integrating ad tech SDKs is one with the development time it takes, because there's a lot of SDKs that takes a lot of time, and even more with maintaining it, crashes and stuff like that. And like SDK, ad tech SDKs are notorious for like crashing your app. So this is probably the biggest issue you have. If these are good, then the size is more of a minor issue. Yeah.
Great. That's interesting. Thank you. So we've spoken about hybrid monetization. What I want to talk about now a little bit is measurement and what kind of KPIs you can see. So what are the successes? What does success look like in advertising today for game developers? Do you want to take us away there? What
Sure. So for audio ads, it's something we got a metric called the listen through rate. So the user, like how long do they listen to an ad before they mute it or before they decide they want to completely exit the application?
Right.
Our listen through rate, surprisingly, for standard ads not rewarded, is 88%.
Okay.
Now you can imagine for something like a YouTube video ad, it's probably like 5%, honestly. You use it as soon as the skip button appears, they press the skip button immediately. But with audio ads, because it's there in the background, you can almost argue it's subconscious marketing. They don't really bother to press the button. They just leave it and let it do its thing. With rewarded audio ads, it's more like 98% listen through rate, because the user consents to listen to the full 30 seconds for that audio ad to gain some type of reward, whether that be skins, coins, you name it. Hammam, would you like to go next as well?
Yeah. So in terms of measuring success from an ad monetization's perspective, it's usually a mix of two categories of metrics. One that has to do with user engagement. So it's usually either some sort of retention based on like users' usual journey. Also something that has to do with sessions, so session time, session frequency per day. This is the first thing we'd like to look at. And then the second thing is obviously monetization. And it's CPMs and like top line revenue are good, but usually the most important one is the LTV and the LTV progression over time, because you don't want to make a buck a day, you want to make like 10 cents for 30 days or whatever. So yeah, it depends on the game, depends on the user's retention curve and LTV curve, but it's usually a mix of like engagement, retention, and LTV.
Gotcha. Excellent. And so LTV, that's lifetime value. So that's how much you spend and how much then, once you've acquired a user, how much they're going to stay with you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that then, actually. So user acquisition, we mentioned it a couple of times. Advertising has a role in that, and retention. Like, my understanding of the background is that the cost of acquiring new players is rising. It's expensive. So how can smart ad design help you keep existing players in the thing, first of all? I don't know. Is that something you can talk to?
Yeah, definitely. So if your ads do not burn and churn those users that you spent so much trying to acquire, then that's a win, right? Like, because retention is very important. LTV is very important. You want to maximize the amount of value that each user gives you, whilst also, it's like how can I explain it? It's a win-win situation. That's what we're always trying to aim towards, a win-win situation. When it comes to actually acquiring new users, we've seen users that do UA campaigns in geos where it's cheaper per dollar to acquire users. Let's say they want to increase the in-app purchases in Jordan, for example. In user acquisition, you're always competing, and most people tend to focus on the US, because with the US, each user has a higher purchasing power, right?
Right.
However, we have seen a lot of studios have great successes by acquiring users, like in this region. So Tamatem is a great example of this. Jawakar, Madhook, and there are brands that want to advertise here too as well. So definitely a hybrid way of acquiring users is important. So having a bit in the US, a bit in the UK and Germany, having some in Jordan, some in Saudi Arabia, some in the UAE, Australia, you name it. That's currently where it's at.
That's interesting. Yeah. What's your take on that?
Yeah, maybe I can talk a bit from a advertiser perspective. The main theme that you've seen with advertising in mobile gaming over the last few years is that you have less and less control over targeting, less and less control over where you spend and how you spend it. The number one lever that you have is your creative, is your messaging.
Right.
And the cliche thing, it kind of become a cliche because you hear it every time, but what Meta popularized as creative is the new targeting. It's very, very true. So I would say the most important things to keep in mind is it starts not with what creative you create. It starts with the infrastructure of, can you actually, if you create a creative and it does well, or an ad that does well, can you actually hypothesize why it did well? Can you do you actually have a way to build on that, iterate on it? And this is where a lot of advertisers lack, is they're very they produce creative. Some do well, some don't do well, and then you don't have that process to iterate over
Right.
it, to build on it. So I would say like you should invest less time in obsessing over a single creative and more time over obsessing of the process of how you got there and what you're gonna do next.
Interesting, very interesting process. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I've got a bunch more questions. So we know you know some of the ones that are coming. Do I have any questions from the audience? Does anyone want to ask a question from our ad experts before I move on? I want to make time in case anyone has any questions. Oh, we've got one over here. Sorry, Charlie's close to him. If you can grab a mic. So what we'll do is we'll get you a mic, and I should say, because we're recording the session, so we know you can't be everywhere at the same time. Some people are in the other room. You'll be able to watch these back later, but that means if you have a question, please do take the mic because then we record the voice as well. Right? Oh,
Is the mic working?
Yep.
Hello.
There we go.
Okay, hi guys. Thank you so much for the interesting discussion. I had a question about ads. Because I work more in monetization, so I wanted to go there. When it comes to ad-driven monetization, there's often a fine line between maximizing short-term revenue and maintaining player engagement. So how do you find that sweet spot where ads add value rather than reduce retention and drive churn?
Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So I think there isn't, like, if you think about retention, because that's the metric you've used, but you can like ask the same question about multiple health metrics within mobile gaming. But if you think about retention, there isn't a good or bad retention really. Like you can't say that 40% is good and 35% day one is bad. It's all relative to the context, and it's usually relative to the contents of how you, how you monetize, and B, how you acquire users. So the balance doesn't happen. You don't look at it reduced retention, so it's bad, so I shouldn't do it. It's more of a balance between that's the negative you get, and you'll get negatives from a lot of ad monetization improvements, and then you need to be able to weigh out the positives, which is usually they monetize more, so I can pay more, I get more revenue, I can pay more on marketing, I can build up the user base. I would say it starts with figuring out not just what are the positives, what are the negatives, and how can I weigh both against each other, because not everything that reduces retention or user engagement is necessarily bad.
Yeah. Just to add to that as well, something that we do at AudioMob is we're very data driven. Every single day we're looking at metrics like the listen through rate, the render rate, the addressability rate as well of each user. And we're also we're working with our studios to do a bunch of A/B tests. So for example, let's say we have a new developer that integrated AudioMob for the first time. They expose us to 20% of their users, and then they increase, for that 20% of the users, they'll have an ad every single level. And for the other 20% of users, they'll have an ad every second level, and the other 20% every third level. And then you see out of these three user groups, which one has the right balanced frequency before it really annoys the user, and then you lose that user, right? So being data driven every single day and looking at what your users are doing is how you can get that fine line and that fine balance between monetization and user satisfaction, I would argue.
Thank you, guys.
That's great. Thank you for the question. And that's a really important point, isn't it, about the amount of data that's at everyone's disposal, advertisers, developers, publishers. I remember back in the old days of in media before mobile gaming, people used to say that half of all advertising was wasted, but no one knew which half. The fact is that actually we do know now, right? What works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Does we have any other questions before I move on? Yeah, that's good. Well, we'll make some time for some other questions. So if you have any thoughts, do put them to us. I want to talk about something actually with regard to numbers. You mentioned it very briefly there. Let's talk about AI.
Sure.
Right. Let's talk about AI and automation. So AI is a super hot topic. We've got a whole program about it tomorrow. Are AI tools changing how advertising works? There's two sides here. I mean, there's people use AI to generate creative. Don't know how you feel about that, but also the amount of analysis that can be automated these days is incredible, right? So tell us a little bit about how AI works in the advertising space. Do you want to take us away there?
Sure. So we have AI in two different aspects of our product. One in the bidders. So we have a real-time bidding system that where every single brand can outbid each other, say, no, I want to be in this user's ad slot at that moment in time. And our ML bidders, they understand how much each advertiser and brand want to pay, and they set the price accordingly. So it's constantly trying to learn from the behavior of the brands and the advertisers, essentially. However, we also have an AI creative product. So let's say you're a small company like that just started. Like you want to sell, for example, coffee beans in the Middle East, and you want to reach users in each different country. So Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, but you want your ad to feel authentic. Our AI creative can actually make the audio ad with the accent of a specific city, with the accent of the specific country. So it feels more natural, like it was made there. Imagine if you had to do that yourself and hire some agency to do like 20 different audio ads. It's going to cost a lot, right? So we have this, and it's a free product as well for our brands as well. And the good thing about it is that it can create for each campaign and each creative 100 different variations. You decide how many different variations, and you can decide which one's the perfect one for you as well.
So that's really interesting. So as well as its role in analysis, you've also got this creative tool that can do it at that level of detail. So that's amazing. I mean, do you use AI in your work?
I mean, on the advertising side for creatives, yeah, for sure. On ad monetization, I wouldn't say we use a lot of AI. I think like AI in the LLM, like ChatGPT sense, is not used that much, and there isn't that use case. But the second part with it, which is automation, is a big one. Right now, we basically do nothing manually from ad monetization, no optimization, nothing with creating waterfalls, nothing with creating A/B tests. Also with analyzing results, we have like automations that break it down for us. So this has been a massive time saver for us. I think there's a lot of exciting new ad tech companies coming up, trying to figure out how we can still influence our ad monetization, even though everything is bedding basically right now. So this is where we're at right now, where we don't have a lot of control, and I think it's very early stage, but I think with time there will be some use cases with AI that can help you maybe bid on a more user level. I know like on the network side, there is that bidding that happens, but on a developer or publisher side, you don't see that. So maybe the next stage is that with AI, you can bid on a more impression level for yourself, and you can say, hey, I want to serve that network instead of that network, or that impression instead of that, even if the mediation or whatever, the ad network wants to serve something else. But yeah, right now, there isn't a lot of uses for AI, I would say, for mobile publishers. There are a lot of uses for automation. If you're still doing a lot of things manually, you're way behind, because you can never be as efficient as the people you're competing with.
I have a question for you, Hammam. So do you know for playable creatives, do you use AI to make those playable creatives like an ad? Okay, so there is Gen AI.
Yeah, on the advertising side, for sure.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, do come back tomorrow, because we've got a panel about AI tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, look, we've only got a couple of minutes left. I mean, I don't know if anyone has a question. Otherwise, I'll go to my last question if we do. Is that a question at the back?
I think so.
It looks like it. Can someone get a mic up there?
No.
Are we just making this guy have some exercise? Is that what it is? Thank you. So we'll get a mic to the guy, and then we're just a few minutes from the end, Charlie. So we'll take that question, and then we'll see how it is. And we get a mic up there? Nope.
I think you might have
Okay,
changed.
I think there was maybe a false alarm. In which case, my final question then, before we go on, let's just talk about looking ahead then. We've spoken a lot about the landscape right now, the state of things as we are. We spoke a little bit about AI there, which is very hot at the moment. But like, what excites you most about the ad tech and the advertising scene over the next few months? Like looking forward in this region or globally, what are you excited about? What's coming up?
100%. So I would say what's exciting is the growth that we see in different countries, for example, as well. Like, let's say right now, some may argue, for AudioMob, there's not a lot of audio ads, like in Jordan specifically, but because we're relatively a new network, I would argue. AudioMob was founded in 2020, so during the COVID era.
Yeah, right.
And in 5 years, we grew to have like this many customers like we do right now. But as we mature more as a company, we'll be working more with resellers that are based and directly from Jordan. They'll bring in more ads. They'll bring in higher ECPMs for developers. More revenue for developers means that they can hire more internships. And maybe with more internships and more developers, the talent pool increases as well. And then you find that these studios, they might split off to found their own company as well, for example. And that just improves the entire ecosystem in general. So that's currently what I would say is what really, really excites me about the space at the moment.
That's great. Thank you. And Hammam, do you want to?
Yeah, I think there's honestly a lot. I see a lot of very, very positive trends, especially for MENA. There is a significantly higher focus on gaming in general, and I think everyone feels that. And this is cascading more and more into in-app advertising. I think the state of the in-app advertising landscape as well is very healthy. I see significantly less concentration on a few big players that you can get ads from, and if you don't, then you're screwed. So this is good. I think a lot of the alternative advertising companies, AudioMob were one of the forefronts on that, but I think a lot of the alternative advertising companies are looking more and more into MENA. Like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, this was our number one thing, where we can't work with like 95% of alternative advertising companies because they don't have demand here. It seems to be significantly better. And also I love the trend of not just having gaming advertising. I think this is very needed, and I think this will bring a lot of potential, not only to monetize, but then to grow the games even further and further.
No, absolutely perfect. Well, look, that's great. And of course, hopefully we'll be back here, inshallah, next year, having the same conversation, and let's see how we do then, right?
Inshallah.
In the meantime, round of applause, please, for my experts here, Suma from AudioMob and Hammam from Tamatem. Thank you very much. And thank you for your question. And if you want to find out more about advertising in your game, which is very important, look these guys up around the conference this weekend. Okay, thank you.